Welcome in and thank you for watching. The day after another unspeakable American tragedy, a new revelation about what Georgia officials knew about that accused gunman at an Appalachian high school. Our news team on the ground in that hurting community with their victims, their families, and their questions needing answers. I'm Reed Cowan. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Okay, so we'll get to Georgia in just a moment, but right off the top, our live feeds watching the campaign trail this Thursday. Former President Donald Trump speaking at this very moment. He's talking about the economy in New York. Also, our video monitors just caught Vice President Kamala Harris arriving in Pittsburgh. Her campaign says the vice president will stay in Pennsylvania to prepare for next Tuesday's debate with Donald Trump. We also have breaking news in what was supposed to be jury selection day in the Los Angeles tax evasion trial of Hunter Biden. So some big changes just happened here. Hunter Biden moving to do something called an Alford plea. So let's bring in CBS News correspondent Adam Yamaguchi. He's outside the courthouse right now. Adam, Alford plea, let us know what this is and why would Hunter Biden want something like this?
Sure. Well, we were all very much caught by surprise this morning as Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden's attorney, made that plea, asked for a change of plea from guilty to the Alford plea. Now, the Alford plea essentially is a plea in which the defendant here, Hunter Biden, asserts his innocence, but is willing to accept and acknowledge the sentence that may come through this case. And so this is a very seldomly asserted plea. It's really, according to the DOJ, only really approved in the most extraordinary of circumstances. So we'll have to wait and see whether the judge, once the recess is, once people are called back in from recess, what the judge rules. Now, why would the defense invoke this plea? Not really clear, but what we can gather from what the defense had been planning to assert in this case was that between the years of 2016 and 2019, in which Hunter Biden was accused of not paying $1.4 million in taxes, he essentially says that his client was not in the right frame of mind. He was in the throes of addiction, which Hunter Biden has made no secret of, and that he was just not in a place to make these decisions. And what the defense feared and was ready to push back against was a lot of the lurid details about those 3 years, what Hunter was doing, what his state of mind was, where he was spending money. A lot of these details that were surfaced in the firearms case earlier this year that they did not want to enter into the court and potentially taint the jury pool with.
Adam Yamaguchi live outside United States Courthouse in Los Angeles. Much more to come on this one. Thank you so much. So let's get back to Georgia, where a community wakes up to remember what the sheriff said 24 hours ago as we brought you this story here on CBS News 24/7. Appalachian High School, the scene of something evil happening inside the halls. Winder, Georgia, about 45 miles outside of Atlanta, the focus of the nation and so many prayers. Killed in our nation's newest school shooting, 2 14-year-old students and 2 teachers, 9 others injured. The alleged shooter is a 14-year-old student who will be charged with murder and will be tried as an adult. By the way, he is expected to make his first court appearance tomorrow. So we start with senior coordinating producer for CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit, Anna Schechter. Anna, you just got an incident report from last year that shows the suspect and his father were questioned by police. If I'm a parent in Winder this morning, I want to know why more action wasn't taken.
It's a great question because the local police were acting on a tip that had actually gone to the FBI, to federal investigators who were concerned enough that they called the local police department and said, hey, you need to go today to interview this family. And they were able to track down Colt Gray and his father. They spoke to both of them, and local police officers asked about a Discord account and a Discord chat group. Apparently, a threat had been made to a middle school for as soon as the following day, according to one of the officers' incident reports that we obtained today. So it was an imminent enough threat that they didn't waste any time tracking him down in a day. This was on May 21st. Of last year. Now, the father told officials, the 2 officers who went to the house, that Colt had been having trouble at his previous school, but things had gotten better since he switched to a new school. He acknowledged that he had firearms, that he had rifles in his house, but said that they were for hunting, that Colt had access to them while supervised by his father. Also, we learned new details about the family. The father, Colin, told the two officers that he had divorced from his wife, and his wife took two younger children to a different location after they were evicted from their last home, and he and his son Colt moved to this new home, also in Jeffreys, Georgia, in the same town. So we learn a lot of new details from this report about the family, the troubles that they were having, the fact that there was this Discord account that the FBI linked directly to their previous address. And the local officials were confused. There was a lot of disparate information. The Discord account, the username was written in Cyrillic and spelled out the name Lanza, referring to Adam Lanza, who you'll remember carried out the Newtown shooting. So very troubling stuff, but the officer wrote that he couldn't substantiate from his meeting with Colt and Colin that that Discord account actually belonged to Colt, and so the case was closed.
So many questions, not the least of which, did any of that information get to school officials, school counselors? Certainly more questions than answers there. Anna, thank you so much for that. So now let's take it to where the pain is here in our nation. Let's go to Jerika Duncan. She's joining us live now from the scene. Jerika, I said yesterday during our live coverage that each of the people affected are somebody. Today, what are we learning about the victims?
Yeah, there are a number of students that have come out to this area behind me near that flagpole to set up flowers, to mourn, to grieve. It's been a very touching experience just to watch people coming together. We spoke earlier to a chaplain who told me he had direct contact with the mother of Mason Schermerhorn, and he said that he actually told the mom yesterday that he would go inside the school to try and find her son. He was obviously, at that point, he said the body had already been taken out, and of course they later learned that he was among the 4 who had died. But one of the things that he said is that everyone, quote, acted together as one goal to save everyone and get them out safely. And I think that just speaks to the sort of coming together, if you will, of a community that is grieving, that is at a loss for words. Again, we've talked about being in these situations and seeing this play out in other cities, but it's different when it happens in your hometown. And that's sort of the sentiment we're hearing from people who've come out today. There was a mother and her 9-year-old son. She said, obviously my son is 9, he didn't go to this high school, but I just felt like I needed a place to put my pain. So she was out here, she said, sort of paying her respects. We spoke to a Jose Ortiz, a 9th grader, who said he knew Christian Angula and called him a friend, said that he was someone who always motivated him to be better. Esther Matias, 9th grade, that also came out to lay flowers, talked about Christian as well as a good kid, and said that she's praying for the community, even talking about finding it in her heart to pray for the shooter, the alleged shooter in all of this. And going back to what Anna said in reference to what we know about this shooter, you know, in that incident report, when the FBI, when the sheriff's office showed up and questioned him, he said that he expressed concern that anyone was, quote, accusing him of threatening to shoot up a school, stating that he would never say such a thing, even in a joking manner. So based on that, you have someone that clearly knows this is not something you joke or play around with, but we now know the end result. And I think so many people are always desperate to understand what that person was thinking, but I don't think it's something that many of us will ever understand, because it is truly unexplainable. It doesn't make sense for the families, for the children. Something else that I thought was interesting is late last night when we spoke to one of the students, she said she's worried about the younger kids. She's 16 years old.
Right.
And she talked about worrying about the future of the people that are coming up after her. And I think that is a sentiment we've heard over and over again. I think it'll be this generation that really changes things, because they've now been touched by this over and over and over again. Yeah,
important conversations. Had them with my twins last night. The very same thing. unfathomable things, Jerika, things we will never understand, as you so eloquently say. But what we do understand is the fact that communities come together. And right now you're giving us a sense of how they are placing their pain right there behind you. And they're helping people to find a little purpose in that pain. Jerika Duncan, weekend anchor for CBS News, national correspondent, nobody better. My friend, it's good to see you on the stream. Sad it's under these circumstances. Thank you so much. All right, when we come back, we're going to be getting down to the business of Donald Trump's legal journey. We're going to be talking to CBS News correspondent and attorney Katrina Kaufman about what's next for Donald Trump. A couple of losses in court. We're going to let you know what he's facing coming up. All right, to Washington now. Former President Donald Trump's election interference case back in a D.C. courtroom today. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman joins us live now. Katrina, walk us through the case. What happened in court today?
Reed, as a reminder, this is the federal election interference case against former President Donald Trump, where he is accused by special counsel Jack Smith of attempting to interfere with the results of the 2020 election. Among these charges are accusations that he knowingly spread misleading information about the results of the election, that he was part of a conspiracy to disrupt and obstruct the certification of that vote in Congress, and that he was also part of a conspiracy to threaten and intimidate voters so that their votes wouldn't be counted. Now, today we met at this courthouse, and it was the first time that the parties had come together with Judge Tanya Chutkan in over a year. That's because this case was put on hold while Trump pursued the issue of presidential immunity, which was decided by the Supreme Court in the spring. And then in August, the Supreme Court remanded it back to Chutkan's court. And now she is trying to chart a path forward for this case. So really what we heard in court today was both parties' views of how the case should proceed. And from what I heard, it seemed as though Judge Chutkan is leaning towards something that was proposed by the prosecution, which is that they begin by briefing on the issue of presidential immunity, which is really the core issue the case was remanded to her for in the first place. I mean, she also pointed out that she thinks it's futile to set a trial date at this point. She recognizes that there's likely to be an interlocutory appeal on this issue of immunity again, and so she really seemed to want to focus on that first and get it out of the way. The other thing that really stood out in court to me today, Reed, is that Judge Chutkan has made it clear that she is not abiding by the electoral calendar. She said that she's not talking about the presidency here. She's talking about a 4-count indictment, and any insinuation by Trump's counsel that this was a sensitive and grave time really just seemed to perturb her. She said that she is a trial judge and she will proceed regardless of the election.
Treating it like any other case. Katrina, thank you so much for
really
being there today. Okay, let's ride our video feeds now to Great Britain, where attorneys there say they are no longer going after disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein in criminal proceedings. Prosecutors there for the Crown Prosecution Service say they don't have the evidence to secure a conviction against Weinstein in charges brought 2 years ago. In that case, a woman accused him of indecent assault. That was back in 1996. Our cameras now take us to Haiti, where Secretary of State Antony Blinken working to restore order in Port-au-Prince. To do that, he's meeting with Haiti's prime minister while armed gangs still wield great power. Those gangs notorious for violent clashes with police. Haiti has been without a president since 2021. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin working on U.S. support for Ukraine and traveling to Germany to do just that very thing. This trip comes just days after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky repeated his pleas to allies for long-range missiles and looser restrictions on how Ukraine can use the missiles. To date, U.S. dollars to Ukraine in support of their war with Russia totals more than $55 billion. Let's jump the map back to the United States. 2 police officers in Macomb, Illinois, about 4 hours outside of Chicago, recovering today after being shot serving a warrant. This is video from overnight. The officers in critical but stable condition. By the way, classes at nearby Western Illinois University canceled while police investigate. Let's go to Florida now. Our video monitors bring us this view. Flooded roads there. This is Jacksonville, Florida. You can see the police lights there trying to keep people out of the roads, even their bumpers up to the water there. Jacksonville, Florida, getting a lot of rain recently, and the floods making it not easy for anybody who lives there. Let's talk to Zoe about your forecast in that region.
Well, they could be getting even more rain out near Jacksonville, Florida, and Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. All of them are likely going to be seeing a very similar scene that we see here overnight tonight and continuing throughout the day tomorrow as a stationary front is impacting them. The stationary front that brought Texas, some areas in Texas, upwards of 6 inches of rainfall. That same frontal boundary is on the way for the Gulf of Mexico states as well. You can't see that boundary clearly because it's kind of just a mess of clouds, as another boundary is also making its way across the northern parts of the United States. So let's take a closer look at that because we are going to continue to see the impacts of that storm system. So 2 areas that we're watching right now: cold front that's sitting across the northern part of the United States, and then that stationary front and associated low pressure system. And it's that stationary front across the southern parts of the United States that we are going to be more concerned about when it comes to an additional 5 inches of rain or more. So taking a closer look at that excessive rainfall outlook, there is a bullseye directly over New Orleans where there is going to be likely excessive rainfall in abundance of 2 to 3 inches per hour, if not more. So let's take a look at that storm system, that low pressure system that will just be scooching along the Gulf Coast, and it will slowly, very, very slowly make its way south of Louisiana. As it does so, it will bring rounds of heavier showers and thunderstorms, and again, 2 to 3 inches of rainfall per hour, and potentially upwards of 4 to 7 inches per hour. That is extremely heavy rainfall coming in a very quick amount of time, and that is likely going to lead to flooding concerns as we step out over the next couple of days. Likely going to be seeing widespread rain anywhere from 3 to 5 inches and upwards of 8 to 10 inches in some of those locally higher amounts. It's the reason that we have widespread flood warnings in effect all across the Gulf Coast states, something we are going to keep a very, very close eye on because flooding this time of year, they need the rain, but they don't need all of the rain at one time because it does unfortunately lead to that flooding issue.
All right, thank you so much. Hey, when we come back, police in Germany say a teen had plans to attack a high-value attack site there. We're going to tell you what it was. A shooting ensued. We'll let you know what happened with police as soon as we come back. All right, this happening in recent minutes, we wanted to get to you. Our video feeds take us to Baltimore, where Justice Department officials just announced some significant action on a national security matter involving Russia. Let's listen in to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland.
Today, we are demonstrating our commitment to protecting national security by any legal means necessary, with the unsealing of an indictment against 5 Russian military officers and 1 Russian national for their global malicious cyber operations around the world. On August 7th, the grand jury sitting in Baltimore, Maryland, issued a superseding indictment charging these 6 individuals with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion and wire fraud conspiracy. This indictment follows a June 25th indictment that charged Amin Stagal, a Russian national, with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion related to the Whispergate attacks on the Ukraine and elsewhere in 2022. The indictment alleges that these officers are a subset of Unit 29155 of the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, a military intelligence agency responsible for attempted deadly dirty tricks around the world, including committing cyber operations beginning in at least 2020. The indictment alleges that these individuals used U.S.-based companies as their infrastructure. But adding insult to injury, these individuals not only used tools to scan for vulnerabilities 63 times on a Maryland U.S.-based government agency, but they also scanned our allies throughout the world, including Ukrainian servers and servers in various other countries. Then they used the Whispergate malware, deploying destructive computer intrusions against Ukraine and other allies. These compromised systems have no military-related role, including agriculture, education, science, emergency services, and they stole sensitive data, as you've heard, including health records. So we are acting because if you violate our laws, we will seek accountability. The public needs to know about the threat posed by cyber criminals, and these criminals need to know that their actions will not be ignored. We're accepting any and all information that protects the lives and furthers our national security interests. Rewards for Justice is a State Department program that now maintains a $10 million award related to each of these individuals. I want to thank the National Security Division and the FBI's Baltimore Field Office for its consistent and outstanding partnership. And I want to thank the FBI's Milwaukee and Boston field offices for their support, along with many of our international law enforcement partners. I also want to thank our team here at the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Maryland, including our Criminal Division Chief Alicia Washington and Assistant United States Attorneys Aaron Zielinski and Bobby Golderas. Next, you'll hear from FBI Special Agent in Charge, Bill Dalbagno. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Barron, for hosting us today. We thank you and Assistant Attorney General Olson for the collaboration, expertise, and hard work that brought us here. I'm Bill Dalbagno. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's Baltimore Field Office. Today is about partnerships, commitment, and accountability. We are here, yes, to announce this indictment, but we're also equally here to highlight the international coordination and robust partnerships with our allies around the world. This type of cyber warfare will not be tolerated. The scope of Russia's crimes cannot be ignored. Ukraine, the United States, and 26 NATO countries were all targeted by this group of Russian military. We are aligned in our unified response, and we will collectively defend against Russia's aggressive and illegal actions. The FBI and our partners call this investigation Operation Toy Soldier. Through strokes on a keyboard, these criminals crossed over borders into countries, hunting to find weaknesses and seeking to harm. The Whispergate malware attack in January of 2022 could be considered the first shot of the war. The cyber criminals sent a message with their malware, telling Ukrainians to, quote, be afraid and expect the worst.
You've been listening live right now to words out of Baltimore, the Justice Department officials announcing indictments against Russian nationals. You heard them mention two things very much so in that news conference: NATO and allies. Of course, fundamental to NATO is that an attack on one is an attack on all of them. And so that spirit of doing something here in the United States to protect allies in NATO, and also Ukraine, which the United States has given billions of dollars in weaponry and sources in their battle against Russia, that is fundamental to what this is about. Likely, we anticipate that you're going to have a lot of questions about this, so we'll continue to try to get answers and really drill down. You heard them mention that the Russians were able to access health records. We know thousands of you in the United States in recent days got letters saying that some of your health information was compromised. If you received one of those letters, we do not have that connective tissue to connect what happened in Baltimore to those letters, but we'll be asking those questions, you can bet. Another place on the map where there are a lot of questions today, and that is Georgia. When we come back, our news team's there in a very hurting community where people are looking for answers. One day after a school shooting killed 4 people and injured 9 others. We're back after the break. Evasion trial against Hunter Biden. You know, jury selection was scheduled to begin in Los Angeles this morning, but moments before those potential jurors were brought into the courtroom, the president's son submitted a plea to maintain his innocence and instead accept punishment for the charges. That was news to prosecutors. So court is in recess while prosecutors look over this request from the Biden team. Surprised a lot of attorneys and a lot of journalists outside. Biden previously denied any wrongdoing in that case. CBS News 24/7, always rooted in your communities. And today, our teams are in that Georgia community where new details are coming out about yesterday's deadly mass shooting at Appalachia High School. the alleged shooter, just 14 years old, expected to make his first court appearance tomorrow. He faces murder charges, and prosecutors say he will be tried as an adult. Police also say the teen walked into that school yesterday morning with an AR-style weapon and opened fire. The result? 2 14-year-old students and 2 teachers died, 9 others injured, and an entire community and nation traumatized. Senior national correspondent Mark Strassman live in Winder right now. Mark, we're learning more about the victims. Tell us about the people there and how they're dealing with this as they learn the identities of the victims.
Well, it's a heart-sore community, Reed, and with good reason. This is the deadliest school shooting in Georgia history. This community has lost 4 members, 2 students, both 14 years old, and 2 math teachers, one of whom was also a football coach here. And there's just a combination of grief and shock that's going on. You see the flags flying at half-mast behind me, and this is one of those moments that's going to take a long time to recover from. And so many communities in America have gone through this. Too many communities have gone through this moment. And now this community is just the latest one. And you talk to people here, and you hear the same thing over and over again. I just never thought it would happen here. And I can't believe it's someone in our own community that could do something like this. So it's really, as I say, it's a heart-sore community.
Mark, earlier, Jerika Duncan said right there from that scene that they are coming there because they're trying to find a place to put their pain. As you talk to people, they're trying to process the enormity of what they're feeling. Any reaction to some of this new information that's coming out about the alleged shooter and contact with law enforcement like a year ago?
Right, and just to bring folks up to speed on that, so in neighboring Jackson County, deputies questioned the same teenager and his father about the FBI had received some anonymous tips about online threats against a school, a local school around here. So they thought they had tracked it back to this same suspect. They questioned him. He denied having posted the threats. His father said, yes, there were guns in the house, but the son did not have complete access to them, only when supervised. And of course, here we are today. So I talked to the sheriff of Jackson County about a half hour ago, and I asked her, was this a missed opportunity? And of course, it's one thing to know what you know now and then try to apply it to what happened a year ago. And the sheriff, she said, no, it was not. Based on the information we had at the time, our investigator did a solid job, did the best that he could. But clearly in the minds of the community here, there will always be nagging doubts about whether he could have been stopped a year ago and whether the carnage of yesterday could have been avoided.
Right. CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman, thank you so much for that report on the stream today. So let's deepen this conversation. We want to show you this. Look at this map. Take it in. You see those red dots right there? They represent the number of incidents that a gun was fired or brandished at a school this year. Our CBS News analysis of data shows out of more than 200 reports, 10 of those were in the state of Georgia. Those numbers are what happened in Georgia, and it puts gun violence back in the spotlight during the presidential race. So our cameras are also fired up in Pittsburgh, where Vice President Kamala Harris just arrived moments ago. We understand she will likely be asked about this on the campaign trail, as will Donald Trump. As for Kamala Harris, she's going to stay in Pennsylvania to get ready for the upcoming presidential debate. That happens next week. CBS News political campaign reporter Shauna Mizell is in Erie, Pennsylvania, following the Harris-Walz campaign. Shauna, Governor Tim Walz and his wife Gwen, we know this, they are teachers. Can we expect Walz to talk about these shootings at his rally today?
Not only are Tim Walz and his wife Gwen teachers, he comes from a family of teachers. In fact, his siblings are teachers as well, and we know that he met his wife Gwen in the classroom. So I don't think it would be a surprise if we hear Walz mention this today. We also heard him talk about it in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at a campaign stop yesterday. But in his regular stump speech, Tim Walz says that he's a supporter of the Second Amendment. He also brags that he had the best shot in Congress when he was in the House of Representatives. But he says that our kids should not be getting shot dead in their classrooms. That's a regular part of his stump speech, and so we can certainly expect to hear him talk about that shooting in Georgia today.
We know he's getting ready to debate J.D. Vance, Donald Trump getting ready to debate Kamala Harris. You have some news to tell us about debate rules just released?
Yeah, CBS News will actually host that debate between Walz and Vance. But as for the ABC debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the rules have been set. There will not be any opening statements from either of the candidates, and they will have to stay behind their podiums throughout the debate. The microphones should be muted, but if there is significant crosstalk or exchanges between the two candidates, then the microphones will not be muted.
All right, Shauna, thank you so much. At the water's edge, CBS News political and campaign reporter. We appreciate you so much. Hey, our video feeds also bring us news out of Team Trump on the campaign trail. Former President Donald Trump just wrapped up a speech about the economy in New York, and Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance. He is in Arizona. He's been there. He's going to stay there for another day. He's campaigning in a very hot Phoenix today. Our live video feeds also bring us back to the United States and Portland, Oregon, just one of the cities also feeling the heat today. So as we look live at Portland, Oregon, we know triple-digit temperatures are going to be the reality in many places out west, Zoe.
Triple-digit heat is going to be a big issue as we step out today, tomorrow, and through the end of the work week. But it's not going to last forever. So let's take a closer look at it, because we are going to continue to see that heat dome, that large area of high pressure, being the reason that the heat is going to continue across the west coast of the United States. The reason that there's barely even any clouds to cool us down, and those winds circulating around it in a clockwise direction. That is influencing a lot of things, including a bit of wildfire smoke and haze in the air, but it's also creating and building near record high temperatures. Let's take a look at those heat advisories that are in effect, because widespread all across the west coast of the United States. Excessive heat warnings in effect across Southern California and Arizona. Heat advisories in effect for the rest of California and up across the Pacific Northwest, where the Pacific Northwest is likely going to be breaking records this afternoon. From Oregon up to Washington, Portland, Oregon could reach 103 degrees this afternoon, breaking their old record of 101. Medford could potentially reach 106, which would break their old record of 103. Even Seattle reaching 90 degrees. They have never reached 90 on today, on September 5th. So the heat, yes, it is going to be on, and that means heat-related illness risk is going to be a factor as we step out over the next couple of days, unfortunately. So people across the West Coast, you need to make sure you are aware and you are practicing heat safety. Again, it extends from Southern California over into Arizona and really all across the Central Valley in California. That is going to be a big issue stepping out today. Tomorrow, though, you notice it's already beginning to back off from Arizona. And by later this week and into the weekend, you really notice that heat-related illness risk beginning to back off. That is great news for any weekend plans. Things are going to be better. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. But until then, Reed, unfortunately, it is going to be heat safety, drinking a lot of water, finding shade and breaks that you can take during those peak daytime heating hours.
We're almost finished with it.
Almost done.
All right. Thank you so much. Hey, when we come back, a planned attack on the Israeli consulate in Germany. Bullets fly. What we know about a police shooting overseas when CBS News 24/7 returns. Until then, we'll be watching our monitors. We told you we'd be watching the monitors. We have been. Our live video feeds watching the campaign trail this Thursday. So former President Donald Trump just spoke about jobs to members of the nonprofit Nonpartisan Economic Club of New York. This group often hosts some big names. Let's listen in.
Nobody ever thought this was possible. This is how you create massive capital flight and turn once prosperous nations into absolute ruins. I will have no higher priority as president than to restore the fair, equal, and impartial rule of law in America. We have lost the rule of law. Who would have thought? Number 6, under my leadership, America will encourage domestic production instead of punishing it. As you know, our country's vast manufacturing wealth was created at a time with very little domestic taxation, few regulations, and most revenue came from tariffs from other countries. That was when we were at the wealthiest ever, proportionately. We were the wealthiest country ever during those days. That was before income tax came along. Now we foolishly do the opposite. We oppose lowest tax of any nation in the world, and we relentlessly punish our own companies for doing business in America. You do business in America, you're punished tremendously. Many companies come to this, so they can't compete. They're sending kitchen cabinets, washers and dryers, everything. I can tell you, every motorcycles.
All right, listening to former President Donald Trump speaking about the economy in New York at a forum there that often hosts big names in politics and sports and media and elsewhere. So people gathering there for lunch to hear him as he makes his case to voters there in New York on his policies. Meanwhile, we want to take you to international news because there's been something that is getting a lot of headlines, a police shooting in Munich, Germany. The story that emerges to our monitors right now not only shows you the response there, but the backstory. An 18-year-old Austrian national dead after exchanging fire with police. So police say that teen had plans to attack the Israeli consulate. In fact, officers said they noticed the suspect carrying what they described as a long gun near a museum containing Nazi-era historic items. At some point, that teen opened fire. Police fired back. They killed him. Nobody else hurt in this. Police believe that suspect acted alone. Meanwhile, the Israeli army continues its major operation in Gaza, and you can see right there an explosion and smoke rising out of that area. That's the West Bank you're looking at. And BBC World Affairs correspondent Mike Thompson reports it's one of the largest assaults right now in that Israeli-occupied territory.
On Wednesday, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant referred to the more than week-long military exercise aimed at ridding the area of what Israel calls terrorists as mowing the grass. And the latest example of this was a drone strike on the northern city of Tubas very early this morning, in which 5 people were killed. The Israelis said all 5 were threatening Israeli forces, and one was the son of a commander of the Al-Aqsa brigades. Now, over the last week, we've seen 39 people killed, 7 of them children. There was one 14-year-old boy killed in Tukran, and there was also a 16-year-old girl who was killed in a city quite close to Jenin. Now, her father said she'd been looking out of her window at a house that was being surrounded by Israeli forces when she was shot in the head and killed. Now, this city, Jenin, is a flashpoint area. It's home to a refugee camp of around about 14,000 people, and is thought to be a hotbed of recruitment for Iran-backed Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Now, I've been talking so far of just the last week, but if we go back to the start of the Gaza war in October, the UN says more than 600 people have been killed. And it's feared that if this violence continues, we could well see something as bad as what's happened in Gaza itself. Over to you, Reed.
Our BBC partners reporting live in the wake of that. Okay, so our crew's also on the road with the Pope on his 12-day southeast trip through Asia. The Pope talking about religions, getting along better, and climate change as he makes this tour. He's holding mass at Indonesia's largest mosque right now in a show of that religious unity. CBS News' Anna Matranga reports the Pope also met with Indonesia's top leader.
The enthusiasm is palpable here at the stadium in Jakarta, where tens of thousands of Indonesian Catholics have gathered from all over the country to celebrate Mass with Pope Francis. In his homily, the Pope urged them to build a more just society. Do not grow weary of dreaming and building a civilization of peace, he said. I encourage you to sow seeds of love. Less than 3% of Indonesians are Catholic, but Asia is one of the few places in the world where Catholicism is growing, both in number of baptized Catholics and in vocations. Earlier on Thursday, the Pope met the country's top Muslim leader, and the two signed a declaration to fight religious violence and protect the environment at Jakarta's iconic Istiqlal Mosque. The mosque is connected to the nearby Catholic cathedral by an underpass called the Tunnel of Friendship, a sign, Indonesians say, of the country's tolerance for other faiths. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim nation, and religious freedom is protected by its constitution. But there have been acts of religious violence in recent years. The Pope and the Grand Imam also called for decisive action to confront climate change, another priority of Francis's pontificate. Indonesia is only the first leg of what will be Pope Francis's longest and most challenging trip yet of his papacy. On Friday, he goes to Papua New Guinea, another island nation that is severely affected by climate change. Anna Matranga, CBS News, Jakarta.
Let's jump the map to Florida now, where flooding stranded these drivers yesterday. You can even see a cat there, knee deep in. Do cats have knees? You see a cat pretty wet there. Heavy rains flooded the streets in what some are calling the worst conditions they've seen there in many, many years. But once again, we see people helping people there. They saw water not only in some cases up to their doorsteps, but over their doorsteps into their homes.
I was shocked this morning when I looked at the door and it started coming in the doors. I started getting towels and put down at the doors trying to block it so it wouldn't flow through the house. But it's in every room.
My goodness. Okay, Zoe, so take it away. You're talking about those severe flooding impacts in that region and elsewhere.
Yes, they're going to be looking at even more rain on the way for Florida, but the heaviest rain is going to be places like Louisiana that are likely going to be seeing a very similar scene that people in Florida saw, because very much moisture is on the way, and that's going to saturate already saturated soils, and it's going to create ponding and flooding on the roadways, something that we'll be keeping a very close eye on. Again, especially in places like the Gulf Coast states that are looking at a stationary front. It's bringing widespread cloud coverage, widespread heavy rainfall. There's also a cold front that you can see making its way across the Midwest. That cold front could be bringing them a little bit of severe weather, but it won't do anything nearly as excessive as the rainfall that we're expecting along the Gulf Coast states. So if we do see where that front is right now, where both of those fronts are right now, I should say, that cold front across the Midwest might bring a few stronger thunderstorms, but it's this excessive rain risk down across the southern parts of the United States that we are significantly more concerned about. You can already see that widespread rain making its way in across Louisiana, and some heavier rainfall rates over 3 to maybe even 5 inches per hour, which is why there is a bullseye directly over New Orleans, southern Louisiana, going to be looking at that enhanced risk, a level 3 out of 4 for that excessive rainfall, potentially seeing upwards of 8 to 10 inches in some of those locally heavy showers and thunderstorms, as that low pressure system very slowly makes its way across southern Louisiana, bringing rounds and rounds of heavier showers and thunderstorms today, tonight, overnight, and throughout the day Friday, before very slowly departing into Saturday. So even Saturday morning, you could still be impacted by some heavier rainfall. Wet weather will stick around at least throughout the rest of the week, with upwards of, again, 3 to 5 widespread inches and upwards of 8 to 10 in those locally stronger thunderstorms. Things will be keeping a very close eye on when it comes to those flooding concerns through the rest of the week. Reed, back to you.
And liftoff. Go Starlink, go DTC.
Well, after a weather delay, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket on its way to space. This is mission number 15, if you're keeping track. Launching from Cape Canaveral, the Falcon rocket will release a new batch of Starlink satellites into orbit meant to provide internet directly to smartphones. This is the third Starlink mission in a week after a failed Falcon 9 booster landed in the sea. Thank you so much for watching CBS News 24/7. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place.